what is the value prop of Skycoin, right? Because I come here on the site, I see what is Skycoin, right? We come here, we see, what's the first one, right? Skycoin is basically a new blockchain ecosystem built from the ground up, right? So ecosystem sounds nice. One of the cool things I did see, you have hardware devices, right? So people
A
buy
lot, yeah.
people buy these hardware devices, hook it up to Wi-Fi, and they're now kind of in this new ecosystem. How does that work?
So we have a Sky Miner, which is it's basically 8 computers, and each computer can run a separate blockchain application, and you plug it in and you get mining rewards. And most people don't really need this, but if you're like a company and you have 400 employees and you need to VPN your traffic between your offices, or you need if you needed like 1 gigabit per second VPN, you
Mm-hmm.
need we have like 8 computers in this thing, so we can actually VPN the whole office for 100 people at 1 gigabit per second. So we built a lot of things like so that's one application for that for like companies. Another application is each of these nodes can run a separate blockchain application. So if you want to um, we have a platform called Fiber, and you can launch your own blockchain. So, and this is really, really interesting. You saw all this censorship on Twitter and Facebook and Google, and these
Mm-hmm.
companies are just out of control, like YouTube, like purging all the crypto channels, and it's just really out of control. So a lot of people are upset about that, and they have to live in terror. Like you can't say this, you can't say that, and the rules are like constantly changing. So a lot of people aren't really. We were given this internet, and they said it's for free speech, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you should be able to say what you want and give the media back to the people. So you have a blog, you say what you want. It's like having your own newspaper, right? But now they say, no, no, you can't say that, or no, no, that that's fake news. New York Times said this, and you disagree with them, so you're a Russian bot. We're gonna have to
Mm-hmm.
ban you because you're
Yeah.
working for Putin. What? Like yeah. So um, so the internet was sold to us as being decentralized, but it's not. Basically, all of our data now is controlled by Facebook, Google, and Twitter. And what we did was we built this platform called Fiber, where basically we're able to give control of the user's data back to the people. So instead of hosting your tweets on Twitter or hosting your videos on YouTube, we
Mm-hmm.
actually give you your own blockchain. So you have not only one blockchain, but you have a blockchain for your tweets, a blockchain for your blog, a blockchain for your videos, and any person that subscribes to you can download a whole copy of the data. So it's replicated peer-to-peer globally without web servers. So there's no central, and you
So,
own that
so
blockchain.
quick question: does that mean everybody has to have a miner to talk to each other, kind of like
No,
as
well,
nodes?
most people aren't going to set this up. They're not going to run Linux, but we have over 10,000 nodes on the network, so there's already there's a surplus, right? And
Mm-hmm.
as more people come on, we get more nodes, and we've always had more nodes and bandwidth and storage than we've had people.
So ten
It,
thousand
it's we
nodes, like in a VPS or like as hardware?
as hardware, yeah, hard physical nodes. They're all physical. It's not VPS. It's not
Wow.
virtual.
So
It's not on
ten
Amazon.
thousand of
These are
this.
all physical.
Wow, this
Yeah.
is that's insane. Okay,
So
so quick question
so
then.
the
I mean,
mhm.
apologies. So what's difference? What's the main difference between running this and just like a Raspberry Pi besides
it,
power?
it is a Raspberry Pi.
It
It
is
is a Raspberry Pi. Well,
okay.
it's a 64-bit like 860. It's a more this one's an upgraded version with a more powerful micro like 8 cores and more RAM, and but it's 64-bit. But you can run it on a Raspberry Pi. So you just run a bunch of Raspberry Pis, plug them in, hook them to the network, and you can start launching like your application on it, and that could be your YouTube channel, storing your YouTube channel, your Twitter, and so on. And so yeah, you could literally just take a Raspberry Pi, plug it in, and then run this software on it, and that would be able to at least you're not going to be hosting a video thing for 100,000 people off that, but it's enough to seed the network like BitTorrent, and then other people, if you have a lot of subscribers, they're going to have copies of it because they're getting coin rewards for replicating the videos. So if people are getting paid actually to distribute this content, to store it, and to make it available to users. So you might need to have one copy yourself just to make sure it doesn't go away, and make sure your friend, one or two of your friends subscribe to it in case your node burns down or something. But it's replicated peer-to-peer over the whole internet. And this is really interesting because once one copy of that data is inside of a country, it will go locally over the internal network in the country. It doesn't have, like right now, if I download a video, it'll go from all the way around the earth to California and then back, and anyone in between can block it. In this system, every copy of the data is the same. So if someone in Japan downloads it, and you're in Japan, you'll just download it from the guy in Japan next door. So the data doesn't have to go all the way around the world and back. And so some things like for China or Iran or something like, or things where the government might shut off the whole internet for the country, right? That doesn't work anymore for this type of data. You can't shut down an individual channel anymore. So this technology is really interesting and revolutionary. But in order to, so from a technology perspective, as a software developer, an engineer, a mathematician, I would say that blockchain is just a database. So a lot of people have been using blockchain to create tokens, and we were the first one to see blockchain as a database. So Ethereum said blockchain is going to be this global computer, but we said that's not going to work, because why would you have 200 million applications on one database? It's just going to be slow. It's going to be bloated, right? So we gave people the ability to have an individual, independent database, independent blockchain for each application and even for each user. So now I have 100 million blockchains in parallel,
Kind
and
of
they
like
can do
so kind of like to shard a blockchain, sharding in a way.
not even sharding, completely independent.
Okay.
So each one has each block. So in a shard, you still have to wait for the main blockchain to update. In this one, I can have 300 transactions a second. So think about your tweeting, right? You're updating your blog. Are you updating your blog more than 300 times a second?
No.
No, you're not. So so this gives you a full pipeline where every application is getting 300 transactions a second. And unless you're like Reddit or 4chan and you have 40 million users ship posting 10,000 things a second, if it's just your Twitter or your YouTube or your comments for your thing, and you have one blockchain whose whole storage and transaction capacity is dedicated to that one application, it's basically unlimited, right? And I don't think that I didn't want gas. One of the things I wanted to get away with is gas, because in Ethereum you ended up paying $2 every transaction, or 20 cents or whatever it is now, and you paid for the transactions, but the storage was free. And in EOS they charge you for the storage and they give you free transactions, but they both ended up costing the same. And then anyone who really had an application with a lot of users had to fork either EOS or Ethereum to make their own blockchain anyways, because they ended up getting, imagine if you had to pay $2 every time you clicked a link on Twitter or Facebook. Like, who would use it?
Yeah.
So I think I wanted to move away from this gas model of trying to nickel and dime and telling people, you own your hardware, you own your data, you own your channel, you do what you want with it, and if other people host it, we'll give them this incentive. They'll be able to make money making sure that the content is distributed. So this is part of this vision of a new internet. It's not just this networking protocol, and it's not just the hardware, and it's not just our programming language, and it's not just these decentralized social media apps that we're building on it. That's really what the Skycoin ecosystem is. It's each of these is only a component of a larger system that it took a really long time to build. And this year, I think, is the first year that all the components, the networking stack, the programming language, the blockchain platform, the hardware, that the whole ecosystem. We're really, I think, what I would consider to be what comes after EOS or what comes after Ethereum. But when we started building this was almost it was almost 10 years ago when Bitcoin launched. We were already working on the transaction problems and signature mutability and the duplicate Coinbase outputs and different vulnerabilities in the Bitcoin, the way the networking worked, that it would allow a government to sort of block all the Bitcoin nodes or take them off the internet or hijack the network, and we saw a lot of crazy things. So all this stuff we did was basically a response to Bitcoin, And then EOS, Ethereum, they did what they could with the technology they had at the time. But I don't think that that type of platform and that model is going to scale to, for instance, having 6 billion people on it. I think that we're going to need 12 billion blockchains. And if we have 12 billion blockchains on Earth, right, we're not going to be able to do proof of work. We need a consensus algorithm. So we also invented a new consensus algorithm called Obelisk. And I don't want to get into that, but basically proof of work works for Bitcoin because it's the largest coin. But a lot of smaller coins got hit by attacks because you can spend $100,000 to rent hardware by the hour to attack the network. And a lot of networks were attacked. So proof of work didn't really work for the smaller coins. And what we're really talking about is when you start your company, you have a company, right? And you incorporate your company, you're going to put the shares of that company on blockchain from day one. And those shares are going to be on an exchange and have an order book, and people are going to be able to buy and sell them as assets on day one. So what we're talking about is small businesses, local businesses, and communities being able to create corporations and do IPOs and stuff on blockchain, and the share in the company on blockchain. Instead, because really what a lawyer does is they have a ledger, right? And they keep track of who owns what. Delaware a few years ago said you can put your stock on blockchain, but no one did it. They legalized it. But 5 or 10 years from now, every new corporation, the shares of that company are going to be registered on blockchain. And imagine you have your little company. Are you going to go to Binance or I don't want to pick on Binance. I like Binance. I don't want to pick on them. But are you going to go to OKX and pay like, $2 million to get your thing listed or whatever? And, Binance is a really good exchange, but they're focused on the big coins, Bitcoin, Ethereum, EOS, and whatever. They want $1 million a day volumes, $10 million a day volumes, $100 million a day volumes. If you're a mom and pop grocery store in Mexico, they're not going to list these tokens, right? So we need a new financial model, basically a centralized exchange model where every crypto asset has a order book from day one, and they don't have to go to these exchanges. The exchanges will still have a role, but we're going to be moving to a new decentralized model where you incorporate an asset and within 1 minute it's already traded. There's already an order book. It can be bought. It can be sold.
Kind of like what's happening with automated market makers and DEXs, Uniswap, yes, in a way.
So this idea, you don't have to ask anyone to create your token or your asset, and then you don't have to ask anyone to get on an exchange and have an order book. And you don't have to ask, so this is the next generation, and this is sort of what we're building. Is Skycoin is building piping and tubing and infrastructure for this new vision of what we saw the internet and the financial services and IoT and industry, where we saw the world going in 10 or 20 years. Like if I'm a company and I have an office in Brazil and I have an office in China and Japan and the US and Europe, and every country passed a law saying all the data has to be stored in their country. How do I comply with that? I can't. It's impossible. And if China blocks the Western one and the Western one blocks China and whatever, do I want the Chinese government to have my data? Do I want the U.S. government to have my data? Do I want the European government to have the data? They say the data has to be in this country because they want a copy of your data. And if I'm a company, I don't want to give it to them. So that all of these companies, they're not going to be using the cloud in 5 or 10 years. They're going to be storing their data on their own servers internally, and it's going to only go between their servers over their own network. And we're providing that for corporations. We're giving them their own hardware to store. You can have 1,000 computers, 1,000 Raspberry Pis. Mm-hmm. You can have 1,000 terabytes of storage. You can have a full copy of all your data at every one of your offices. You can have it only goes between your nodes, basically on your own internal network. Everything that enters or leaves the network is completely encrypted. So this is really, and I don't want to get into the details, but Walmart was fighting with Amazon, and some of Amazon's vendors think that Walmart banned any vendor working with Amazon because they think that their customer lists were stolen by Amazon off the cloud. So if you have a company and you put your data in this cloud, some of these people are also competitors, and they'll steal your data and then use it against you to steal your customer list or do this or do that or cause you problems and things like that. So so a lot of these companies, governments, military, corporations, and individuals concerned about their privacy, social activists that are doing things, protesters and things like, and people get their head cut off in Iran for protesting the government. Do you really want, and they just go on Amazon, and if if the Iranian government gives a court order to Amazon, says hand over the data on the server, or we're going to shut off all the Amazon servers in Iran, do you think they're going to hand that data over, and that person's going to be pulled over by police, and they're going to be executed and have their head chopped off? And this is really what is the company supposed to do? Like, what is Amazon going to fight every government, fight the German government, fight the French government, fight the Iranian government, fight the Syrian government? It puts these companies in a position that they can't win. So the solution to this is we're going to re-decentralize the data. We're going to put it on our own servers and take the data away from these companies. And increasingly, they don't want the legal liability either. What's happening with Twitter now is the government in Germany comes in and they tell them, you're going to censor this because we say it's hate speech. And they're telling them to censor election campaigns for people in the United States. And Twitter says, oh, well, censor it in Germany. And they say, no, our court order says you have to censor it globally. So what do you do if a German court comes in and tells you to censor an American political candidate because they say it's hate speech? And then then they get sued in America because they say you're violating our rights and this is illegal interference with election and this is violating campaign finance rules in Florida. And they're getting sued in Florida and they're getting sued at the federal level because they're complying with a court order in Germany, and they're going to get fined like $100 million if they don't. It's like, what? Like, so this is, I saw in Silicon Valley what was going, and I can't really talk about a lot of the stuff that was going on, but it's a mafia shakedown racket. If you knew what the internal politics and the government and the NSA and the national security state and the corporations, governments, courts, politicians, if you saw the war zone, if there's a line outside Zuckerberg's office of 40 people of like, censor, I don't like this guy, you have to shut him down, or this is hate speech, or anyone running against us in election is a Russian, but it's like the other political party is Russians. You gotta, and the other like what? Like if you're like, they're literally saying that any advertisement by a Republican was a Russian bot. Anyone supporting a Republican was a Russian bot, and then they come in with some guy, and what do you do if you're a company in that situation, right? Because you're going to get screwed either way. You're either going to support that guy, and they're going to complain that you're supporting him, or you support him, and they complain that and you can imagine the lawsuits. Like these companies they're worrying that they're going to get like $10 billion of lawsuits, or that you don't even know and then there's like blackmail, and like some guy sets up like a NGO and flooding pressure groups. It's
crazy.
The social media,
wild.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So the solution is we take back our data, we get our data away from Amazon, Google, Facebook, Twitter, we put it on blockchain, we build a new internet, we re-decentralize these applications that are blogging or tweeting or video sharing, and that's it. It's done. And now the internet's back to where it was before. Everyone has freedom. No one can be censored. If they want to shut you down, they have to sue you or get a court order, or whatever. They at an individual level, and instead of having one or two companies that everyone can gang up on and threaten.
Yeah. All right, cool. So I mean that was a pretty in-depth answer. So let's move on to the next question.